Everyone, welcome to Friday, April 24th's edition of Weekly Market Update. We're here to go over the news of the week as well as all the numbers from last week that we've accumulated. And now we're going to shoot them out to you and kind of give us our analysis of what's happening. Hey, Ryan, say hi to everybody out there.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? Thank you guys for joining us here on whatever platform you're joining us on. We're going to shoot it amongst all of us. So, definitely like us on Facebook, Instagram, and follow us on YouTube as well.
So every week we want to give you an update. I know we're in interesting times with a COVID-19 coronavirus that's hovering around all of us as a cloud over all of our heads. But we do want to go over that this is not doom and gloom, as I hear a lot of people out there. And I'm going to show you that the numbers prove it out. So let's go right into the numbers, Ryan. What we're seeing here, Los Angeles, actually we have graphs here on Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Riverside, and Orange counties. We are seeing a slight leveling off and declining on home sales. So when we take a look at the micro numbers in each different county, we're definitely seeing in Southern California typically an 8% drop as a whole in the actual sales. So if I go ahead, here's Los Angeles County. Let's go on, Ryan, to the next slide.
And kind of what he's talking about here is you've got actives and then you've got pending. So the amount of new inventory that's hit the market, not as much as being swallowed up. And there are some reasons for this, and we can get into it here in a little bit. So here's San Bernardino County for a while, another slide. This is a little bit more interesting because when you look at the actives pending and sold, it's much more in an equilibrium, an equal state. And we think that's more because there's more affordable housing in this county. Mm-hmm. It's not the upper tiered price points that are having issue with loan limits and things like that. And lenders aren't lending on the upper price point limits as easily. And that's why, because of the price point of the average, and median home in San Bernardino, it's a little bit healthier of an overall market countywide.
Right.
And then you've got Riverside as well. You're seeing more of the same numbers. So you've got actives, pendings, So this is within 1 week that Troy's put together here. April 13th to 19th is this week. You've got 512 actives and 381 went pending and 450 were sold. They were in escrow previously and closed out. And then you've got Orange County. Same thing here. Actives are a little bit higher. You've obviously got a lot more, higher price point homes here in Orange County compared to Riverside and San Bernardino. And that's why, we're seeing this pending number that's a little bit less. And solds, coming off the market are still about that equal from the 30 days, 45 days out. So, and this is what we're seeing in Orange and LA County. We're seeing a lot of properties moved to hold status. And so these actives that Troy is doing a search on, they show up active for a day and then they get moved to hold immediately. So you can't really show it. You're not able, to market and put in offers on most of those homes on hold. And so it skews the numbers a little bit. Some of those properties that are hitting active aren't actually able to even be sold. So of the total homes that people are interested in selling, almost 800, and this is an Orange County number here. So there's 4,400 active homes still sitting inactive as of 4/20, and there was almost 800 on hold. That equated to about 15% of the properties that people were interested in selling weren't able to even be sold. And because of that, that's why we see some of these numbers where the actives are high and then the pendings are lower.
Right, and the solds are coming down. And so as we're in a typical normal market, we have about a 2 or 3% of properties being hold. And I know people are going to ask, well, what are all the actual, definition of hold, right? Well, if in today we're talking about, they just get tired of people walking through their home, or what actually is happening a lot is that they don't want people to walk through their home. Yep. So now they're making it very, very hard to actually view homes. And then they get a little frustrated when they can't get a lot of people showing up and looking at the house, or they're obviously... They walk in and they're fine with everybody walking through their home, and all of a sudden they just heard a bunch of terrible news and they said, hey, let's just take the home off the market.
And that's a great point, because you got to look at LA and Orange County. You have a lot older home inventory, and the typical owner is a baby boomer. So that person is a little bit more at risk due to COVID-19. A lot of those sellers, they're interested in selling. They've signed their contracts to list, but they're going to go ahead and hold off. And that's why in those areas we're seeing a lot of those move to hold. And that's, kind of how we're interpreting these numbers from what we're seeing out there in the field as we're calling these agents. I've called agents with homes on hold to ask them, hey, can we really get in? Can I write an offer subject to us seeing it later? What can we work out? And most of them are just, nope, our clients are nervous right now. We're putting it on hold, but I do have a contract, so they've got to list it on the MLS. So we'll start to see some of those come off of hold later down. And what we're going to want to show you now, as well as what is that demand? How is the market going to soak that up? And this is one of my favorite charts. This is from Reports on Housing. Stephen Thomas puts this together. Now, here's all of OC over here. You've got, this lower purchase price point. It's almost a
under 500,000.
It's under 500,000. It's almost non-existent. It's less than 2% of the market. Most of the homes that fall into this, they're, maybe it's a probate deal. They put it really low, $399. It's got to go through court approval process, things like that.
Auction.
It's going to take forever to go through those processes. That's why we see such a high day on market. It's not because there's not an equal demand, which we see. It's just those homes. It's almost statistically, obsolete in this price point. So what we really want to be focused on is this 500 to 750. That's a first-time home buyer range here in Orange County, and it is still a hot market. You've got 36% of the demand in the county is in this price point, and you've got 14% of the inventory is in that price point. You have a 3-to-1 buyer to seller ratio. That is huge, and that's why we're saying when these homes start to come off hold, there's still plenty of demand over here to eat that up. I mean, we got Pac-Man over here getting bigger and bigger with demand, and the inventory, is just still out there, the little dots for them. So keep that in mind. And then you've got the next tier again.
Let's stop it there. And also looking at, because of the demand is so great and that there's not very many homes, take a look at, Ryan, at days on market.
Absolutely. It's 49 days.
Right. You're literally talking in 45 days. If another home didn't hit the market in that price range, you'd be out of inventory.
You'd be out of inventory.
Right.
Yes.
Zero
so if nothing
inventory
else came on the market, you'd be done in 49 days. You got a month and a half of inventory, which is just epic low. And then you go to the next price point. So this is, the move up buyer tier here. Then we talk a lot about the first tier of move-up buyer. And on this one here, again, the demand is still outstripping the supply. You've got a little bit more of a normal days on market. And you got to remember, in this price point, you've got dated homes that are coming up that people are going to have to still dump a lot of money into to repair. This is a huge swath of properties in this price point. And then you hit that second move-up tier we talk about. We're constantly saying, hey, the entry level's hot and the first two move up tiers. And here you go. It's more of an even market going on here. Days on market's higher, and this is the under 1.2 that we reference a lot of times. And as you can see, anything over the 1.2, it's going to be, more of a buyer's market. The demand is less than the supply, and the days on market as you roll up into the higher price point,
5-6
it goes
months.
into years, 3 years for 4+. And you have to remember, these homes, they're still getting added, and that's why we're seeing a skew of what's really closing. It's this entry level price and not this, and that's why you're going to see these reports come out and say, oh, the median price point's dropping. Yes, but it doesn't mean that we're not still in a very healthy market, a market that's really on fire in these price points here. So keep that in mind. The people who don't understand and they're running these numbers in the news and newspapers and stuff like that, they're looking at one digit across the whole county and a whole price point. It's a segmented market out there, and you have to look at what cities, what counties, and what price point you're interested in buying in.
So, micro details.
They are the microeconomics and the micro details here. Absolutely. So that being said, this is one of the questions we get asked all the time, and this was a great article that came out, and it's just going to cover, will the coronavirus induce foreclosures hit Great Recession levels? We've been saying no all along, right out the bat. This is completely different. We were in the trenches in 2006, 7, 8, 9.
Right.
We were actively selling. We moved over to the foreclosure space. We worked and had a lot of contact with banks and their asset managers, and we've talked to them, and they're not seeing anything like the previous Great Recession. So this was a great article. Logan, I'm not even going to butcher his last name. I would follow him on Facebook. He's got some great charts and graphs. He's a columnist with Housing Wire. Pulled this off there. And he was saying there's 8 existing advantages, Obviously the government has their forbearance they're coming out with, but homeowners are just in better, health and a better situation rolling into this pandemic right now and this recession that we're most likely going to be seeing, and we're figuring that we're in obviously right now. So reason number one, the housing market was healthy before we hit this coronavirus. So the purchase application data was at highs. You had double-digit growth right rolling into when we got down on shutdown. It was, firing on all cylinders.
So let me ask you, Ryan. So if I go back to 2006 and 2007, we were also firing on double-digit growth. Yes. What makes it different today than back then?
And we'll get into that, but a lot of it is what was fueling that growth was these exotic loan programs. You had neg-am option arms. You could come in, you could breathe on a mirror, they'd give you a loan, and your payment would be less than the fully amortized amount. You, on some of these, wouldn't even have to pay the interest at all. So you could come in with this negative amortization. So you're not, you might be paying interest only, you might be paying less than the full interest, and your loan balance actually climbs because you're not paying the full interest. So you might start out with a $600,000 loan, and 3 years in, you've got a $650,000 loan. And people were buying 2s and 3s and 4s of properties of this. It was completely different. And those products were fueling a lot of this fire. And we'll get into some more of the underlying issues that were happening in that time frame as well. He's saying number 2, the most prominent demographic patch is now between ages of 26 and 32. So, we've always talked about this first time home buyer being around 33. I don't really know what he's referencing here, but what I'm taking this to be is we've showed some of the population growth charts. We're having a huge spike of population growth that's going to be rolling through over the next 5 years that are going to hit that first time home buyer tier that's averaging 33 right now. So we're going to have a lot more buyers coming into the market, and these buyers 26 to 32, they're still going to need housing once this pandemic's over. The need to have a roof over their head is not going to change.
And so when you're out there actually showing homes, is this pretty much the demographic you're looking at?
It really is. On average, this is the demographic for the first-time home buyers that we're working with.
Yeah,
there's no
fantastic.
doubt about it.
And for me,
move up even. The first tier move up is primarily in this tier, and a little bit. The move up's a little bit older, but yeah.
And I mean, if we take it a little bit more, I go into micro detail. I think that this generation, which is called the millennial generation, they have been informed and educated and empowered so much greater than the baby boomer or my generation, and that would give them a lot more. At a younger age, a lot more focus on how to buy a home and how to get in a home faster than, of course, when I was 25. We're still wondering what we're doing in life, right? Or we're going through the 8th year of college, right?
Yeah.
Or something crazy. I actually think that they absolutely know more about FICO scores than I ever did at that age, and probably you ever did at the age.
Absolutely.
And they're also about loan programs. All this is
especially the ones watching, things like this and the What's a Mortgage channel and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. They want to soak up that information. They want help. They want somebody to hold their hand through this process. Is what we're seeing, both from millennials and Gen Z coming right up behind them. And, a lot of the millennials, they saw their parents go through the Great Recession. And so a lot of them do want to be more conservative. They do want the fixed rates, which is great because that's what's out there anyways. Mm-hmm. So, and then number 3. So let's go back to that. So when we're talking about unemployment, who is that really hitting? Excuse me. Troy brought this great slide up, last week for us. Why don't you explain this slide a little bit for us, Troy?
So, right now in the news, one of the big hitting points that the U.S. government keeps coming out with, and all the state senators and congressmen, everyone's talking about the unemployment rate, which then trickles down to negative news all the way through, reverbs through our entire nation. But when you actually look at the numbers, let's break the numbers out on who's actually being unemployed, right? And so this was from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this is from the federal government, right? And they're breaking down what industries are actually being laid off or turning around and filing for unemployment. And this is really the nuts and bolts of really who actually is getting checks every single month and applied. So if we take a look at this, we're looking at 59.5%. Let's call it 60%. It's the restaurant and the hospitality, those industries are hitting. So
and so servers, bartenders, what is that age group? It's normally less than this. They weren't in that realm to become first-time home buyers yet. They're not at that stage of their life.
Right. And I mean, if you take it one step further, I mean, this is not your forever job, or this is not your dream job. So it's actually the bridge job. I went from, college, and now I'm just kind of floating out, figuring out life before I actually like lock in a
career.
And that is actually what this number really represents, is 60%. Now, if I look at the combination, the other 40%, there's obviously 10% of it's just other out there, but accommodation industry, retail stores. I mean, you go to the mall, right?
Well, and that's the same thing. Most of these,
temporary help services.
A lot of these weren't in that buyer,
pool
demographic and pool anyway. So we're not seeing first-time home buyers be as affected by some of these at this point in time.
Right. That's awesome.
And then we got number 3. So the high level of nested equity. So this is an interesting slide. There's a couple different details that really jumped out to me. Because they've got so much equity, it's going to limit them from needing to go into foreclosure of the risk. If they need to sell, they've got equity to sell their property and walk away with cash. So even if they get in a monthly payment issue, they don't have an overall really true net worth problem, let's call it. So they can sell. Now, what's also interesting about this one is they're saying because the average homeowner has been in their home now 10 years, they've built up a lot of equity, then they've been able to refinance and get lower fixed rate mortgages, and they've got true roots to their home. Where a lot of stuff we saw in the 2006 and 7, they were speculative, they just bought. The average homeowner was only in their home 5 years back then. So it wasn't that hard for them to just uproot and keep going. And they didn't have the equity. So they had to dump their properties. They were on these exotic mortgages. They didn't have any equity, and they had no roots in the community to their home. They hadn't raised kids there. They didn't have all their friends in the neighborhood. And so this is much different between the nested equity and the roots, I feel, in the community. Also, today's homeowners have a good history of cash flow. Like we talked about, they've had this chance over the years as rates go lower and lower to keep that in a fixed rate, low interest mortgage so it's affordable. And that's why homeowners today are in better economic standing to ride out this crisis than in the previous financial meltdown of 2008. Mm-hmm. So.
Exactly. That's actually well said. I mean, and here it basically shows it. If I've been in my home for 10 years, I've built a lot of equity. Just the statistics that come out for year over year. So last year, April 2019 to April 2020, as a nation, we gained 8% in home values. Think about that. Just in one year, 8%. So everyone who bought, on the average, last year at this time, they already have 8%. That's not counting their down payment, which there's really those exotic loans you talked about. We just pretty much cut out the 100% financing, right? So you actually have 8 plus 3.5 if you did, if you did FHA. So you have over 10%. If you look at it,
and this is amazing.
We are at the highest amount of equity as a nation than we've ever been.
So here's 2006. So here's what the value of all of the housing in the U.S. was, right? And here's what your mortgage amount was. Now, let's skip forward 10 years. You still have roughly the same amount of outstanding debt, but you've got trillions more in equity. So if there was a mishap, this and that, it's just not going to hit as hard.
But there's a buffer.
There's a huge buffer.
There's a buffer
that didn't exist before.
And that's where we go back, as that slide said. I mean, you're sitting there and the 100% financing people, when the market had a little burp, right? What happens
they're out.
Is that I'm 5% negative equity. I haven't put a dime into the house, nor have I put any money to purchase the house. So I have that renter feel to it. And that's when Ryan mentions, I have roots in the community. It's because you've actually you sweated, you've taken your paycheck and you put it down on this house. Then you sweated, put your paycheck down on beautifying the house, and then you reap the benefit of the equity that's in it, that's growing.
And like you're saying, when you've been in a house 10 years, you've got 10 years into a 30-year mortgage, right? Where, you've only got 20 years left. And when you're crossing over that 15 to 18-year mark, majority of the payment is going to principal at that point anyways. You want to ride that one out. So That's huge information there. 5 and 6 together. So the lack of exotic loan debt structures, like we talked about before, the neg-am, the option arms, things like that, and then the high number of home purchase with cash. So that's 5 and then 6. So 20 to 30% of homes in the current market have been purchased cash. So that's a huge buffer to any drop in value because they just don't need to sell.
They don't. And I mean, and as Ryan had said earlier, when we use these fancy terms because they're pretty much outdated, just like he says some of my clothes are. But so neg-am and option arms and then interest only or IOs, those are all programs that you didn't put any money down up front for the home. So you just never felt committed to that home and you had the renter mentality. The second it went bad, you stopped even making a payment. So imagine right now, all of you out there that are looking to purchase a home or you own a home and you made a payment to your landlord or you made a payment to your home and it equaled the exact same thing. Yep. You get nothing out of it. The difference though with the landlord is when that toilet backs up, you call him. And when you own your own home and you have no equity in it and you're just or negative equity and you call it, you have to deal with it yourself. You become tired of that.
That's
because
a great point.
You're just not seeing the benefit of it.
Yeah, and it's funny, go back 10 years, all you heard about at cocktail parties was neg-am, options arms, IO, fast and easy. These are all programs that are non-existent now. I guarantee you don't know anybody with a neg-am option arm, any of these products. They're not there.
Well, if you do know them, they're sinking quick.
Here, there we go.
Sinking quick.
I want to know where they got it, unless they've had it for the last 12 years. And then you got number 7. So we have not had a large number of cash out refinances as we did from 2003 to 6, which drained the equity from homeowners. We showed this slide again a couple weeks ago. I want to show this slide again. We added some of these slides in on top of this great article just to show things we've already talked about. And here you go. So this is from Freddie Mac. This is talking in billions, how much home equity was cashed out of the market. So back then you had $824 billion pulled out as an ATM. I mean, stick in your card, breathe on the mirror, pull out $824 billion and go spend it on your RVs and your fun and your travel and your trips. Now, almost a quarter of that, $232 billion, refinanced out.
And it's nice. It's nice that this has happened. I mean, instead of using our home as an ATM and then really hurting our home's equity, and ultimately it devalued the home to a point where it went negative equity. Now we actually will leave it in there and for our legacy, for our kids to move up, to buy up as we get older, a bigger home as we grow our families. And this is a big plus. Before I thought back in 06, 07, it was a trendy thing to do.
Yeah,
hey, guess what? The Smiths across the street got a Winnebago. Guess what we need to get? Because we want to go on vacation with them because they just pulled out another $50,000 to take that trip to Utah in their Winnebago, in their brand new Winnebago. So those were the things that were being purchased. There wasn't so much that money being reinvested into the home. It was almost as they were reinvesting into, perishable or, equity down equity products, and that's what we're running into.
Yeah, and it's great. We talk to the mortgage professionals we work with. They're more loan advisors and debt advisors, and they have these conversations with clients. Most of these refinances, they are to streamline other higher interest payments, get them down, and then trying to take that savings and put that back into the mortgage and pay more a month with that savings to help get under that debt load instead of increasing the debt load to really help them dig out of it.
Oh, those numbers are huge, Ryan.
Oh, they are
huge difference.
Yeah,
huge disparity.
Yep. And then number 8. So mortgage rates are lower now than they were in the previous cycle. Obviously, if you guys have been around that long, you know that they're about half in a lot of situations. And as long as rates stay below 4.5%, housing demand will be stable. I like to see that. He's straight up calling it out and saying that's his mental barrier on where it is. And everybody we've talked to and heard from on economists have expected the next couple of years to be well below that market.
My opinion on this, obviously living through, what's going on right currently, and then actually back then, is I really feel that the education level on loan programs have significantly increased. Way back then, it was simply how do I stick myself in a house? And so if the interest rates, they were in the 4s and 5s, what you would do is you'd say, okay, I can't get an FHA loan if I put 3.5% down. You know, my DTI or my debt to income ratio, whatever, it just didn't make sense. So instead of that, let me just pay part of my interest. So they would do whatever they could. The loan officers, which were non-licensees, by the way, was never required to have a license in 07 and 08. What they would do is they'd say, let me give you the least amount of payment to squeeze you in. It doesn't matter what the interest rate is. It has nothing to do with that. It's just getting you in, and are you okay with the payment? You know, even though your house that you bought for $500,000 in 6 months, it's really you owe 505, and then in a year you owe 510. You keep owing more money because you're not paying it all. Today, I just see that younger generation, like you said, the 32 to 26 to 33 demographic. They are like, no. Let's hold off. I want to understand what my interest rate is, what these loan programs are, and I want to make educated decisions, not just to stick me into something that was prepared to fail in the first place.
Yep. And from there, simple truth is, obviously, we're not going to be able to save all the companies, all the jobs, and prevent every foreclosure. So the difference is he's saying he feels that the housing market will be suffered. The biggest damage will be suffered by renters. And we will, expect to see more foreclosures than usual in 2021. But it's going to be nowhere near those 2008 numbers, and this is a thing. Who is going to foreclosure, stuff like that? It's going to be the people who've got low equity, no equity. Maybe they've, taken out loans in the last couple of years. And because of that, they've also had a job loss on top of it. My take is, especially in these first time homebuyer tiers in Orange County and in the neighboring communities, Riverside, San Bernardino, LA, between the forbearance options, the most likely chance to get a loan mod and things like that, if you are gainfully employed or you're able to go get another job fast enough, I really don't see this being a huge issue here. I think maybe in the higher price point homes, if somebody's lost a complete business over it and they're in that $1.25 million price point, they bought in the last year or two, they don't have a ton of equity and it's going to be sitting on the market a year while they're not able to make payments. That's where we see more of these foreclosures coming in. It's at the higher price point. And when we've talked to our asset managers at banks and federal institutions like that, they say that's where they see the most pressure on foreclosures are the higher price point homes.
So, I mean, just on an overall market, and what we're seeing as active foreclosures currently, it's all been steady. It's 313 today. Last week it was 310. And this is like Southern California wide. We do have a couple other MLSs that they're not pulled into those numbers. But, I mean, we're just been steady now for such a long time, right? Right at that, 0.5%, 1/3% of all homes are actually foreclosures. And, if you really take a look at it, I don't care if I'm in a hardship situation. I have equity in the home. I need to sell it, right? If I can sell it and I can walk away with my money back, or I can make a few $100s or a few thousand or tens of thousands, I'm going to do that versus just sit in this home and just not make payments and let the bank take it from me. So most of the times what I see is, people that homes are being foreclosed, there's just other circumstances.
Yes.
It's either, a huge illness that caused it and they need to pull money out just to help them through. Or
divorce
situations. Yep. And none of those, a lot of times, again, there's some equity, so they're just selling it and they're actually splitting whatever equity is there.
So it's normally a layer of issues. So
there's a layer.
They don't have equity and they're forced to sell for some reason. Mm-hmm. So maybe it is job and it's going to be a prolonged job loss. Maybe they lost a business and they've got a BK. Right. It's a layer of issues. It's their recent purchase. They don't have equity. They're going through a divorce, or they're going through a BK, or they're there's different an illness, things like that. There's things that aren't going to be cured fast, and that's where we do see foreclosures that are rolling through right now.
Right, but I mean 300 is nothing. Yeah, it's literally nothing. Back in the day, we had 3,000 or 4,000.
Consequential,
right?
Yeah.
This is just if you actually looked and talked to all 300 of them. You really probably would ever hear a sad story every time.
Everyone's a story.
It wouldn't be, hey, I partied and decided I just want to make payments for 5 years. Like it happened in the past. It's not going to be that realm.
And then a lot of those people shut down too. They do have options, but they're so mentally crushed that they don't really properly explore those options, or they don't know those options exist to help them out. So there's a lot of times when I'm seeing the foreclosures that we get as listings, and I'm figuring out the backstory on it. I'd say well more than 70-80% of them had options to get out of that situation, and they just closed off and walled in and just wrote it out all the way down. So. Awesome. The other thing when we're talking about renters, I just saw an updated report came out. We've seen some of the numbers back from or the news agencies and stuff like that saying like, rents aren't being paid and stuff like that. I just saw one from, it was the National Association of Multifamily, and they said that majority of April payments, I think they had dropped to like 10% hadn't been paid, and they just updated, and it was basically like 5% were still outstanding, not paid, but there was a huge amount of later payments in April this month than April last year. So rents are still getting paid en masse. It's just taking a little bit longer on some of those to go through. So.
Well, fantastic, guys. Hey, we want to bring this market update every single week to you. We want to show you the pulse of Southern California real estate. I know that a lot of stuff out there is negative. We want to actually show you the numbers, see the numbers, and see what's really going on. Again, thank you very much for tuning in on us. We'll be back next week. We're going to give you the news of the week and the new numbers coming out. We're closing on the month, so not only are we giving you weekly numbers, but we're coming up on monthly numbers at the same time.
Yeah, if you guys want clarification on any of this, you have any questions, please message us below. We'd be more than happy to get back to you with any facts, figures, and answers you might have to your questions. Hey. Thanks for watching us.
Take care.